you're talking about Ram Tatva,
Yes.
don't you think it becomes important for us to know
Yes.
the limitations of an ordinary man as compared to the extraordinary conduct and personality of someone like Lord Ram?
See, Lord Ram can be realized in each and every ordinary individual. A person is as limited, as ordinary, as he makes himself out to be.
It's aspirational.
No, not at all. My spiritual movement, this spiritual movement has proven in Madhya Pradesh. I'll give you a very small example. 95% of my lakhs of disciples in Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and Gujarat belong to lower middle class youth between the age group of 15 to 35. My disciples, who when they become associated with our spiritual movement, some of them were illiterate, some of them were 10th pass. But having lived this life, now their contribution to society, their own consciousness about nation, Rashtra, Dharma, Sanskriti, it has been widened to such an extent that they are practically living the life of Swami Vivekananda. What I am talking is not aspirational, but practical, which has been achieved in Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and so many other states by the movement.
But don't you think on many occasions for a very ordinary person, even if he is inspired by a political thought or a spiritual thought,
not political.
In the sense you are actually talking about the political empowerment,
Yes.
which is basically the most important thing that you are talking about,
Yes.
because you are talking about bringing people together
Yes.
for the interest and in the interest of the nation and the nation building.
But for the purpose of overall spiritual enlightenment. See, political empowerment can happen
when
in
you're talking
two
about
ways.
political empowerment,
Yes.
there is nothing wrong at all, because as you
No,
may
there is
say,
nothing wrong about
in the olden days, particularly in the Hindu Dharma, everybody knew it very clearly that the Rashtra Dharma and the Swadharma and the Raja Dharma and all these things had one or the other connection to religion.
And overall they
Or
constitute
dharma as
Adhyatma.
such.
Overall
Yeah,
they
so
constitute Adhyatma.
there is nothing
Right.
wrong in actually
No, no.
calling it political
No,
thought
no,
at
there
all.
is nothing wrong.
Okay.
Just one second. There is
Okay.
nothing wrong. But what I want to say is, if you say that this hand is Lahiri Guruji, it is correct but incomplete. What I am trying to say is, our spiritual movement is all about holistic empowerment, which
We'll
is
come
four
to that.
constituents.
But what I was trying to say is that when you're talking about Rashtravad and nationalism as such, and also talking about the nation, most importantly, and your contribution to the nation, sometimes most of these concepts develop more out of evolution than out of some kind of conceptualization. So don't you think that when a person is not very clear about those things and is more interested in his personal growth, he's not actually making a mistake? Because sometimes those larger thoughts and larger concepts actually evolve over a period of time.
You are very true, and I agree with you. And that is the reason the concept of Bharatvarsha need to be understood very clearly. Bharatvarsha at the same time is country, at the same time it is a spiritual civilization, and at the same time it is the sum total of spiritual aspirations and inspiration of millions of rishi who have constituted this rishi Sanskriti. Definitely Bharatvarsha needs a evolutionary understanding so that you can grasp the wider concept of Rashtra. But because that wider concept is there, that a person can be inspired to think beyond himself. And that is the starting point of spirituality, on the basis of which the spiritual movement has evolved.
When you're talking about Rashtravad and Rashtra, is it different from nation or state as we understand these things in the modern terms? Like the nation of India compared to the Hindu Rashtra.
Okay. The word Rashtra is a combination of state and civilization. Let me try to put it in a layman's term. A Rashtra is not only defined by the geographical political boundaries, it also means the civilizational control, the inspirational control it has upon human beings. For example, let us take the example of Japan. Japan has deep spiritual connect with India. Japan has evolved as a Rashtra, and in that evolution Zen Dharma Bauddhic philosophy, Hindu philosophy has played a major role. So, when you use the word Rashtra, it is not only in the sense of India versus Pakistan or India versus Bangladesh. Rashtra is the sum total of state as well as civilizational values.
Is it something only a few people have been talking about and most people are missing in this country, because many people are not able to directly associate with these concepts, because sometimes the larger section of the Hindu majority itself may not be able to directly associate itself with this kind of a concept?
See,
particularly maybe because of historical and sociological reasons within the society.
So, to be very honest, never have ever any survey been done to exactly statistically understand how many people relate or not relate. But let me tell you one thing, every Hindu, every Indian knows somewhere that Hindutva has given the world the beautiful concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Hindutva has taught the world that, as the great saint told to Alexander the Great when he met him, that it is not how many territories you win, but it is how many minds you transform. That in that lies the secret of Hindutva.
But today you're talking about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam.
Yes.
Of course, India has, or the Hindu concept has actually inspired this kind of a faith of the whole world being one family. But
inspired by the same spiritual aspiration.
Okay, but at the same time, the Hindu society itself created so many divisions within itself. So who do you actually call as responsible for that?
Okay. Now
on one side you preach the world something, and the other side you practice something else.
Yes. Thanks for asking this question. Let me use this question to first tell you that one of the fundamental goal of our spiritual movement is to help the entire Hindu society transcend the shudra vibhajan of casteism, linguistic chauvinism, regionalism, political groupism, so that the entire Hindu society, the entire India can unite on the basis of niswarth nirbhik Hindutva sadhana, niswarth nirbhik Rashtra sadhana. हमारे आध्यात्मिक अभियान का मूल उद्देश्य है संपूर्ण हिंदू समाज भारतवर्ष को जातिवाद, भाषावाद, प्रांतवाद, राजनीतिक गुटवाद के ऊपर उठाकर निस्वार्थ हिंदुत्व साधना, निस्वार्थ राष्ट्र साधना के आधार पर संगठित करना। यह बताते हुए, having told this, let me try to explain what I feel about your question. First of all, the way castes had evolved is out of professions, Varna Vyavastha. For example, today you have the profession of teachers, you have profession of soldiers, the profession of businessmen. Now, over the period of time when these professions, because of nepotism, got corrupted, because the king wanted his son to be king, a rich man wanted his son to be rich man, irrespective of the meritocracy, and that actually brought this unfortunate distortion of jati.
Patronized by dharmic people.
If it was, it was wrong. If it was, it was
today,
wrong.
If you're talking about it in 2013, or maybe you started a few years before, but don't you think that's supposed to be the most unfortunate thing about the Hindu society at all?
100%.
So there is nothing actually for us to pat our own backs, because we've been bad to our own people. Like Americans were bad to people who came from some other country. Perhaps somebody else did something to some other people. But when you've done something very bad to your own people, you don't really have the moral right to talk about anything that is great about yourself.
No, I disagree with this. There is a difference between the core ideology and what the followers of that ideology has done. These are two different things. When we speak about Ramcharitamanas or Bhagavad Gita or the essence of Hindutva, it nowhere implies any foundation of casteism, nowhere. It only inspires a human being to realize his true divine potential and at the same time be empowered enough to work for the suffering. If suppose casteism would have been supported by dharmic people, why did Prabhu Sri Ram went to the cottage of Shabri Ma and did worship to her.
But that is exactly always with Hindu Dharma,
No,
right?
let me just complete, please, because it needs to be completed. I totally agree with you that there have been mistakes made by so-called, even so-called, dharmic people, dharma gurus of our religion, and that needs to be corrected. And I am making, through my spiritual movement, a very small effort by, in my spiritual movement, a person's caste is not even asked. Even if he tries to mention it, he is scolded. We are Bharatiya, we are Hindu Tatva Sadhaka, we try to live the life of Prabhu Shri Ram. That is the only parichay we have, my disciples have, and the only mindset they have. Also, let me tell you that our spiritual movement has invested heavily. I have invested heavily spiritually in lot of Dalit empowerment projects, in lot of tribal empowerment projects. See, no human endeavor is perfect. If over the years something wrong has happened, it needs to be corrected, no excuse given.
Dear viewers, let's meet after a short break.
ನಮ್ಮದು ಸುದ್ದಿಗಾಗಿ ಸುದ್ದಿಯಲ್ಲ.
ನಿಖರ, ಪ್ರಖರ,
ಜನಪರ,
ವಿಶ್ವಾಸಾರ್ಹ. ವೀಕ್ಷಿಸಿ ಉದಯ ನ್ಯೂಸ್ ಚಾನೆಲ್.
Welcome after the short break. Today, could that be the reason why, to an extent, the alienation has taken place? That if a lot of people want to follow different cults in this country, if people want to establish their own ways of life under the philosophies, you're talking about assimilation. You're talking about all the states and people belonging to different languages, to different sects, to cults of Hindu Dharma to come together and become one society. Is that what you're talking about?
What I am basically talking about is, let us take languages for example. What I simply mean is, all the languages of India need to be celebrated and enriched. But at the same time it needs to be realized that languages are medium to express the same fundamental spiritual truth of Hindutva. So what I mean is that there should be no bheda bhava, no ill feeling just because someone in a particular state speaks some other language.
Okay, but when you're talking about all this, many people may have actually thought about this for a long time.
Yes.
That the reason for the differences within the Hindu society, and also to look at the stratification about something be at the top and something be at the bottom, basically could be also because of this particular problem in the society, that Hindu Dharma is not codified. Hindutva doesn't actually come out in a book or in terms of one person's preaching. So to be able to understand it and also to interpret it, it becomes a big problem. So that would actually give rise to most of these problems, and that's why particularly maybe this particular problem of people going in their own ways to find the ultimate truth.
See, it is not a problem, it is the strength of Hindutva that it assimilates, it recognizes this fundamental truth of spirituality, as said in Upanishad, that there are as many ways to realize God as there are human beings on the planet Earth. Number one, it is not a problem, it is the strength of Hindutva. But having realized this fundamental truth that we are all trying to realize the same divinity irrespective of the paths we follow, this fundamental realization should be the basis of ours coming together and following the policy of non-exploitation on the basis of caste, creed, color, etc. etc.
But these kind of experiments have actually taken place in the Hindu society for a very long time, particularly in trying to simplify Hinduism and in also trying to give many ways for people so that they can actually acquire or aspire or also to reach their goals through their own ways, if not by the ways that's actually shown by the spiritual leaders. Could that be also a problem? Because, you know, by saying that, you're also telling that the original truth, the original fundamentals of Hinduism is actually very difficult for a common man to understand.
No, no, no. I have never said that, I have never implied that, because I believe that Ram Tatva was easy to understand enough for a prince like Ram, as well as a common person like Shabri, as well as a tribal like Hanuman, Vanar. So, on the other hand, I believe Hindutva is the most easily understood truth, because it doesn't enforces itself on you that you have to believe this. It gives you a broader guideline and allows you to find yourself on your own. Having said that, you have also implied one very good thing. Lot of experiments have happened to try to assimilate Hindu society on the basis of some broad fundamental truth, which is essentially Hindutva. But still, why don't we see a unified Hindu society? For a very simple reason. During the independence movement, there were a lot of localized efforts to gain freedom. Somewhere in West Bengal, Sudhindranath Banerjee did something in Tamil Nadu. But the biggest contribution of Mahatma Gandhi was, he made the fundamental aspiration of every Indian that I want self-governance into a mass movement. What our spiritual movement is doing is, we have transformed this fundamental spiritual aspiration of every Indian to be united on the basis of nationalism and the core spiritual essence of this country, Hindutva. We have transformed this aspiration into mass movement in Madhya Pradesh. That mass movement can be seen at the grassroots level. So can be in Rajasthan. It is beginning in Karnataka. And our spiritual aspiration is not to stop till this mass movement enlightens the entire India.
But in most of the cases, these mass movements don't actually hold on for too long.
Yes.
It could be the Ayodhya movement to thereafter so many other efforts too.
For a very simple
Whether it
reason.
is Anna Hazare's in recent times to actually garner people's support, to fight against corruption. That is an everyday problem.
Yes.
Don't you think in all these things, which you can actually see very clearly, that spirituality is a secondary problem to most people? Unless you actually start talking to people about things like Hindutva, perhaps actually relating the religious life to the everyday life.
Yes. And as you rightly said, the success of a mass movement depends on two things. First, how the organization which is leading that mass movement engages with the people, and what is the commitment of that organization to the goal. Secondly, any mass movement succeed when it actually becomes mass movement, not a person-centric movement. Coming to, as you said, Anna Hazare's movement. Anna Hazare's movement, I believe, was going from strength to strength. But what happened? When Anna Hazare came to Bombay, suddenly he saw that the crowd is not up to expectation. And the media played to it, and he accepted it. And from then on, somewhere the movement withered away. What I say is, a mass movement should never be influenced by what others are saying. If you believe in the truth, you walk the truth till the end.
Okay, but here also a very important thing that you've been speaking about in everything that you say is about Hindutva.
Yes.
Is there a difference between the kind of Hindutva you've been speaking about and the kind of Hindutva we've been hearing otherwise?
See, to be very honest, yes, it is true that Hindutva word has been used, misused and abused for sometimes good reason, sometimes not so good reason. But the Hindutva of which I am referring is the eternal, fundamental truth of Bharatiya Sanskriti. The Hindutva of which I am speaking is that fundamental spiritual truth which, when it was expressed through the life of Prabhu Shri Ram, when it was expressed through the Prabhu Shri Ram's life of niswarth, nirbhik, Rashtra sadhana, Ram Charitamanas manifested, and when the same Hindu Tattva was expressed through the life of Prabhu Shri Krishna, again in the form of niswarth, nirbhik, dharma sadhana, Bhagavad Gita manifested. So these are all like pilgrimages on the banks of river Ganga. What is fundamental is river Ganga. Hindutva is like river Ganga, and pilgrimages are the manifestation of the divinity of that fundamental river. This broad understanding of the essence of Bharatiya Rishi Sanskriti I refer to as Hindutva.
Okay, but when you're talking about Hindutva, there is this fear that perhaps you're actually talking about something else that is in some ways not exactly Hindu Dharma. It could be a politicized version of Hindu Dharma.
In fact,
or
one thing
you
I
may
can
actually call it empowerment, which exactly is the point that you're coming to. Perhaps you're talking about the empowerment of the Hindu society on the basis of
economic empowerment, social
economic,
empowerment,
social
political
and
empowerment
political.
and spiritual empowerment.
Okay, so when you're talking about these things, would it be difficult for you to reach out to the common man by saying that, look, I'm talking to you about Hindutva, but you need not exactly make distinction between Hindu Dharma and Hindutva, because this is an active form of the Dharma, whereas that is the
esoteric form of the Dharma.
Esoteric form
Exactly.
of Dharma.
Exactly, you have summarized it beautifully. When I go to the common man, I tell them this much: Prabhu Shri Ram is not somewhere up there who needs to be feared and worshipped once a day for 5 minutes. You are Ram himself. Realize the Ram Tatva within you, because this realization is the very purpose of your human birth.
But there is a big problem in these terms also. For instance, the whole inspiration of Lord Ram on the Hindu society. For instance, they say there are more people named after Ram in some of the states of the of northern India than you can actually perhaps find a number of people themselves. Like for instance in Haryana, you find almost every second person having this name Ram. But when you see rapes, when you see corruption, when you see such despicable practices in the society and all, don't you feel that somewhere people have forgotten what actually Ram is and what Ram Tatva is and what the relation they exactly may have between the word Ram and what actually Lord Ram was?
You are very correct. The fundamental problem today is that people are disconnected from their own spiritual truth, from their own Rama Tattva. See, every human being born, as Swami Vivekananda said, is born with the same divine potential as all God incarnates have been born. But it is up to that human being to realize his divine potential. You are very correct that all those social evils we are seeing is the outcome of this spiritual disconnectedness. When one person realizes that this entire universe is his own spiritual extension, why will he harm himself? As Upanishad says, Om Tat Sat Asit, whatever here is the same infinite divine consciousness, Prabhu Shri Rama, Adya Shakti Ma Bhagavati. Once you realize this, why will you harm yourself? And then your very outlook changes towards life.
Don't you think then, when you actually give these discourses, or when you preach, or when you mobilize people, the things that you say may actually border on the rhetoric?
No, not at all. Because rhetoric is when you have read something which has lot of emotional appeal and you misuse and abuse it for some selfish motive. But what Guruji does is, I speak out of my spiritual experience, the truth I have lived and realized in my life.
But when you talk about Ram particularly, Ram is from a different yuga altogether. We certainly have a lot of other models in Hindu Dharma, because we have the books, we have a lot of spiritual inspiration, we have a lot of saints from this time itself. So why do we have to relate to an ideal man from a different yuga? Is that actually the idea of Lord Ram's Rama Tattva?
You are very true, and actually I have tried to answer this question previously when I said that Hindutva is like a Ganga, and Ram, Krishna, Maharshi Chanakya, then all the great South Indian saints like Basavanna, they are all like pilgrimages, manifestation of the same eternal divinity, the same eternal Hindutva in their own times. So, even though I am talking about Prabhu Shri Ram, I am not referring to that person of that yuga, but I am talking about Ram Tattva, which when it manifests in Dwapar Yuga, it is Krishna, and when it manifests in today's time, it is Maharana Pratap. Maharana Pratap, just like Prabhu Shri Ram, refused to appease an external aggressor, a foreign invader who was targeting the Mula Dharma of this country. He chose to live 12 years in forest, saw his own elder daughter to die out of hunger, but didn't bow down in front of Akbar. This is sadhana. This is Swadharma sadhana, Rashtra sadhana, Hindutva sadhana, which manifested in Ram, also manifested in Pratap. And just let me finish. Maharshi Tulsidas in Ramcharitamanas bows down to Ram, and do you know? The same Maharshi Tulsidas went to Rajasthan and bowed down to Mahana Pratap, hence signifying it is not individual, but the tapasya which is of importance. That tapasya is Hindutva.
But when you refer to Lord Ram, when you talk about Ravan being a terrorist, doing these targeted attacks on certain congregations of sadhus or particular dharmic activities or all, aren't you also remembering the fact that in fact Ravan himself was a very devout person? He was a Shiva Bhakta,
Ravan was
and basically the problem was ideological, that Ram was Vaishnav and Ravan was Shaivite, and perhaps during that time there must have been an ideological fight which was construed like what happens, whoever opposes America is actually seen as a terrorist.
No, I don't think it is the correct way of putting things, for a very simple reason, that when Ram was about to fight Ravan, he also worshipped Bhagwan Shiva, and then he went to fight Ravan. Let me tell you one thing. The truth here lies in, Ravan is a very beautiful example of one thing. You can be a great worshipper of God, you can be an all-knowing sage, but if you cannot transcend your aham, if your getting spiritual power, if your knowledge feeds your ego, then you can be an all-powerful king like Ravan, and yet you fall for adharma.
But Ram wept for his wife.
Yes.
So how would it be very different from Ravan wanting his kingdom?
No. How does it correlate? I don't understand.
No, because you know.
Are you meaning attachment?
Yeah.
Are you meaning attachment? Yes. Okay. Then let me answer this in its own spiritual fullness. When it is said that Ram wept for Sita, I hardly believe that it was that kind of weeping which a materialistic husband does for a materialistic wife. See, if you see the entire life of Ram, it was dedication to Swadharma. Yes, Ram did feel guilty for one thing, that Sita was kidnapped. Yes, and I will also weep today. For example, just let me tell you one thing. A week or 10 days back, when Pakistani soldiers entered Kashmir, killed 2 Indian soldiers and cut off their head, I also wept. I also wept because I see it an attack on my mother. And I am 100% sure spiritually that for the same reason I wept, out of helplessness, out of the guilt that I did not do enough to protect my country, the same quality of weeping Ram did at that time. That is my spiritual conviction.
Dear viewers, let's meet after a short break.
ಪಾತಕ ಲೋಕದ ಅನಾವರಣ, ಫ್ಯಾಷನ್ ಬದುಕಿನ ಬಿನ್ನಾಣ, ಪ್ರಕೃತಿ ವಿಸ್ಮಯಗಳ ಹೊಂಗಿರಣ.